when we remember that we are going to die, that's actually to help us truly live now. Hello, and welcome back to All Good in the Brotherhood, and to another episode of Benedictine Spirituality 101. I am Brother Francisco. Today we are going to be talking about how we can be a little bit more Benedictine, a little bit more monastic in our daily practices. What are some attitudes or actions that we could take to be a little bit more Benedictine in our own spirituality and in our life? For this, I want to draw from the 4th chapter of the Holy Rule of St. Benedict, titled The Tools of Good Works. And in this chapter, St. Benedict speaks to the monks on reminders and attitudes and actions that they should be doing in order to fully live out the monastic life. He's encouraging them, hold on to these things, because by doing them, living them, believing them, you will become the monk, or you will become the Christian that God desires you to be. Now, this chapter has 74 tools for good works. I'm not going to do all 74. We would be here all day. But I want to highlight a few and see how maybe those could help us to adopt a Benedictine spirituality, adopt a monastic mentality. So of the 74 he lists, one of the first ones that Benedict enumerates is to love fasting. And that might seem kind of interesting. He doesn't just say that you ought to fast as a way to grow, but that you actually have to have a disposition of love towards the fasting. Now, why is that? Well, it's because of what fasting is supposed to teach us. So in fasting, we deprive ourselves of something that either our body prefers or that we enjoy for the good of something else, for the good of a relationship with God. Fasting isn't supposed to just be this white knuckling, let's see who can eat the least for the longest amount of time. It's supposed to be about how I can train my body to be reminded of what my soul is like. So in the Psalms, it says that as a deer thirsts for running water, so my soul thirsts for you, my God. That's what fasting is to teach us, that when we are physically hungry, but we don't eat, or maybe we desire some drink, a comfort, maybe some alcohol or a soda, but we don't, and we still find ourselves wanting those things. That's our body thirsting, right? Or that's our body hungering for those things. That's to remind us of what the state of our soul is always like. It is always yearning for God. It is always desiring to be fed by Him. And so we fast from things, either food or some kind of activity, something that takes time, so then we can take some more time to pay attention to the yearning of our soul. We fast so that we can pay attention to where our body, or our soul, I should say, is thirsting and is hungry. So just like without food we would die, so without God our soul would die. So we fast to give more attention to our souls. And so Benedict asked them to love fasting because he wants them to love their soul and to love their relationship with God that fasting can help deepen. So farther down, Benedict says, if you notice something good in yourself, give credit to God, not yourself. But be certain that any evil you commit is always your own and yours to acknowledge. Now, this is not Benedict trying to slam people into a scrupulosity or try to get them, so concerned about their own sins that they don't focus on the good things, right? And that there's not something good about themselves, right? That's not what he's saying. He's really calling the monk to come out of themselves, So if we contribute some good action to only our own merit or only our own deeds, our own control and power, then we basically make ourselves God because we don't actually have real control. Jesus says, "Oh, you of little faith, you have," right? Because we don't have faith that God is really in control, and we believe that we are. So we're supposed to be getting out of our heads to recognize it is not from me that good things happen, But we're also supposed to get out of our heads that evil is someone else's fault, or for some reason we can blame God for them. We don't like the bad things that we do, and it can be really difficult to face them. So sometimes it's easier just to blame other people. So Benedict is saying, acknowledge the bad things you do. Acknowledge them, accept them, that you did them. But he's not saying to dwell on them. He's saying, by acknowledging them, you can be a little bit more humble, and you could recognize, okay, yeah, just as I might be able to receive good things from God, I'm also still capable of doing evil things. That disposition of acknowledging God and giving him credit for good and acknowledging ourselves for the bad that we do is really to grow in humility, which is not a shameful place. It's not to say, oh, who I am is bad, what I do is horrible, and because of that, I'm not a good person. It's because in a humble position before God, we can receive all of his gifts without pretense. And instead of being acting one way towards one person, acting another way towards another person, we can always give just ourselves. Another reminder that St. Benedict gives his monks, and we should give ourselves, is day by day, remind yourself that you are going to die. Man, that sounds pretty morbid. It's death. Why would we want to think about that? Well, if you want to hear a longer, deeper explanation on this idea called memento mori, remember your death, check out a podcast episode that I did with Nate a few months ago. You can find that on Spotify or on Apple, where we talk about what does it mean to really remember your death and what is that good for us. But it might sound morbid. It's not supposed to be, because when we remember that we are going to die, that's actually to help us truly live now. You probably have heard someone ask, like, if you knew that tomorrow was going to be the day that you would die, would you do today differently? And some people would probably say, oh yeah, definitely. Oh, I would really do things differently. Well, why wait around till you think that you're going to die tomorrow to do those good things? That's why Benedict is saying this. Remember that you're going to die so that you do the good things today while you are alive and you have the light of Christ within you. So what's stopping you from doing the good things today? If remembering that you're immortal, not immortal, if you remember that you are immortal, then you also need to remember that today might be your last. Not in this morbid, like, oh, I always kind of worry, don't do anything because I might die today kind of thing, but rather, if this was the last day I live, what would be a good thing I would want to do with it? This memento mori mentality is not to cripple us, but actually to give us freedom. Free that we don't regret a moment of our life, free to live in the present moment. Another reminder Benedict gives his monks is to dash wrongful thoughts on Christ and then immediately disclose them to a spiritual father. And there are reasons why Benedict says both take these things that you desire or think and dash them on Christ and also bring them to someone else. Because ultimately, it is upon Christ that we must place all of our faith, all of our hope. If wicked thoughts or weird desires that we have, or we seek within our hearts a pleasure that we know we shouldn't, but we still want it, Christ can be the solution. So we dash them on Christ. We say, Lord, I ask you to take this. I ask you to hold this. That's two things. One, it's taking it out of ourselves. But two, it's reminding us of who? It's reminding us of Jesus. And when our thoughts turn to Jesus, they can only turn to things that are good. But then he says you also should disclose them to a spiritual father. Why? Not so that someone can scold you, well, why would you do this, that you're a horrible person, but rather because that spiritual father can keep you from identifying too much with those thoughts, with those wrongful deeds and desires. He can keep us from being too scrupulous, dwelling over and blaming ourselves for these things and saying, yes, you might have felt that, but that's not who you are. And also Christ says, or St. Paul, I should say, says, confess your sins to one another. It keeps us accountable. So while we want to immediately, as soon as we think things, turn to Christ, we also need to turn to a brother, a sister, a father, or mother to keep us accountable so that we're always working forward on a relationship with Christ. And the last tool or reminder I want to mention, and this is actually the last one in all of Benedict's list of 74 tools for good works, is to never lose hope in God's mercy. That God's mercy is beyond our comprehension. So no matter how good you are at any of the 73 tools above this, no matter how difficult you face sin or how strong temptations are or how much you feel like you fall off the wagon and have to get back on, no matter any of that, that nothing you could do is beyond redemption. That if we fail in every other regard, we should not lose hope. Because as it says in the Bible, in the book of the prophet Isaiah, even if your sins be red as scarlet, I will make them white as snow. That's the power of Christ's redemption, and that is the gift of God's mercy for us. So never lose hope in turning to God for his mercy. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Benedictine Spirituality 101. I am Brother Francisco. This is All Good in the Brotherhood. Hope you have a wonderful day. God bless.